Over the past couple of months, I've fallen in love with the film look. With this newly acquired love for this look, I try to emulate film in my own style in my photos and videos. I think I did quite okay, but a few characteristics were still missing. And something that could close the gap between what was actually missing and a real film emulation was the tool Dehancer Pro. I've been eyeballing Dehancer for a pretty long time, but I was really fortunate that they reached out to me and that they asked if I could give my honest review about this plugin. Over the past couple of weeks, I've been playing around with this tool and I've basically used it every single day. So this is a true, honest review. They didn't pay me or anything, and everything that I say in this video is honest and truly my own opinion. Don't expect too many technical explanations about film or the tool in general in this video, because I don't really think that's actually important. What is truly important for me is whether or not this tool will actually add to my workflow, if this tool will improve my workflow, and if I can actually make better color grades with this tool. The editing tool that I'm using for everything is Davinci Resolve, but you can also, of course, obviously use it in Final Cut Pro and Premiere Pro. Before we go any further, let's first set up the right color management settings of our Davinci Resolve project. So you click on the setup wheel over here, then you go to color management, and then we do the following. So for the color science, you pick Davinci YRGB color managed. For the color processing mode, you click on custom, and then for the input and the timeline color space, you pick Davinci wide gamut intermediate. For the timeline working luminance, you pick SDR 100. For the output color space, you pick Rec 709A. Then you limit the output gamut to output color space. The input DRT and the output DRT are Davinci, and the rest is just where it was. And I actually don't really know what everything of this is, but I'm just following the recommendations, and like you saw, I got some pretty good color grades, or at least that's my opinion. So this is a node tree sequence that Dehancer recommends. So first we start off with the noise reduction, then we go over to white balance, then contrast, then some local masking adjustments, and over here I did a light tweak because Dehancer actually recommends a color space transform over here, but I don't really use that, so I just made that color grade. And then after that we add the Dehancer Pro plugin node, and then for the final touch we do sharpening. Before I started editing with the Dehancer Pro plugin, I actually color graded my footage with a pretty hectic sequence. And this is a pretty hectic node tree that I got from Nomadic George's YouTube channel, and this guy is super good at making color grading tutorials for Davinci Resolve. So check out his YouTube channel over here. It's pretty hectic, but it definitely worked. I got some pretty cool results with it, as you can see over here. But since I started using Dehancer Pro, my workflow has improved massively and my color grades are turning out really well. So how this node tree actually worked is that I basically converted my Rec 709 footage to Cineon footage, and then I implemented the Kodak 2383 film stock from Davinci Resolve, and from here I added my own creative look. Then I also added some bloom, halation and grain to make it closer to film. And these were pretty fine, but there were a few characteristics that were missing to make it actually look like film. And that's where Dehancer Pro plugin comes in. So with the Dehancer Pro plugin, there are already 63 film stocks you can choose from. So let's go over the basic adjustments first. If you follow the project color management settings like I showed you before, you should pick Davinci Resolve Wide Gamut Intermediate for your source. And if you've picked this, you can't select the vendor, camera or format anymore. The other sliders actually speak for themselves. It's just some changes in exposure, the temperature compensation and the tint compensation as well. These are actually the same things as the color wheels in your primaries. But in your primary color wheels, you're actually able to fine-tune your color grading even more. You also have a deep-range slider over here, which is really useful to remove chromatic aberration from hard, contrasty edges. Don't mind the weird looking sky at the moment, because I obviously already edited this footage and I still have the temperature and the tint on right now, but everything will make sense when I enable all the other things over here. In the film section, you can pick your film stock, and like I've mentioned before, there are 63 film stocks to pick from and to base your color grade off, so that's really amazing. And I've been experimenting with the Kodak Vision 3 250D. So let's enable this and let's see what this does. As you can see, the colors are already fixed. And I almost forgot to mention, but before you start color grading, let's go over to monitor down below and let's enable clipping indication. Then you can obviously see where your clip is clipping in the shadows or in the highlights. The push and pull slider over here decreases the exposure or increases it, and it also changes the color of your image. So if you want to tweak this a little bit more, you can easily do that. The film developer section is meant to fine-tune the real-life characteristics of the source material, shooting conditions, and creative tasks. I'd suggest that you just play around with these sliders to see what they do. And let's enable them. There we go. You can see that it added quite some color over here because I added some color boost, some color separation, and yeah, I decreased the contrast a bit because I already added quite some contrast in the sections below. The film compression section over here lets you adjust the distribution of your highlights. Using these sliders will make your footage look more analog and more flexible for further manipulation with exposure, contrast, the film print, and so on. So let's enable this. So the expand section actually speaks for itself. The black point is actually the lift from your color wheels, and then the white point is your gain. Yeah, and you just play around with this until you get a pretty good exposure and some good contrast over there. Let's enable this one as well. Film printing is the last technical stage of the analog movie production. As a result, we get a film print that can either be shown directly on the screen using a film projector or scanned and then used for the digital delivery. We have 5 different options, but I chose the Kodak 2383 print film, since this film print is used by a lot of Hollywood movies. So let's enable this one. There we go. As you can see, it added quite some contrast already to the image, and I think it's a bit too contrasty, so let's decrease the contrast boost a bit. The color head section is actually the section that I use to get my creative look into this film look. So I just play around with the yellow and blue slider, the magenta and green, the cyan and red, to just see what I feel like fits the mood of the video and which emotions I actually want to evoke with my color grading. So let's enable this one over here. There we go. As you can see, it actually made the things way warmer. And over here you have even more control on how much saturation you want for the shadows, the midtones, and the highlights. So that's pretty cool. As you can see, it really affects the image a lot. So now we've arrived to the most important characteristics of the film look, and we're going to start it off with grain. So let's enable this. And the first thing that I usually do is to change the film type from negative to positive, because negative is actually some pretty harsh grain. As you can see, you might find it a bit too strong. That's actually my opinion as well, so that's why I changed it to positive, and for the mode I just pick analog. The reason why the grain from Dehancer Pro is so great is because they use a special algorithm to generate grain based on local color and brightness characteristics of the image. So every time you add grain to a different video clip, it's specific to that specific video clip, and it's not just an overlay added on top of your footage. So that's really great. These sliders over here actually speak for themselves, so you can adjust the size, the amount, the film resolution, which actually affects how sharp your image is going to look. So if you want it to be really sharp, you can put it all the way to 100, or if you want it to be a bit less sharp and a bit more blurry, you can decrease it a bit. Over here we have the amount of grain in the shadows, the midtones, and the highlights, and a golden rule is to have your midtones always like 10 or 20 more than your shadows and highlights. This usually delivers the best look. One of my favorite characteristics from the film look is halation. Halation is a visual effect that appears when shooting on a film as a red-orange halo near the contrasting boundaries of overexposed areas, as well as a red glare in the midtones. Usually halation is produced around bright light sources. So let's enable this. This isn't actually the best clip to show off the halation slider. Over here the halation is way more visible in the bright areas of the image, as you can see on top of here. And if I increase the global diffusion, you can see that it becomes really exaggerated. The source limiter controls the contrast of the border between the source and the background. The smoothness is how soft the halation halos look. Local diffusion, how far the light spreads from the edge of the source. The global diffusion affects the degree of secondary glare of the red layer. Adjusting the amplifying slider adjusts the energy strength of the flare. Hue changes the color of the halo. Blue compensation removes the blue tones when using the halation effect against a blue background. Impact is the opacity slider, and mask mode is that you can only see the affected area. The bloom effect adds a diffuse light to light sources, the bright areas of the image, and contrasty edges. But in order to see the bloom effect, your image has to be bright enough. As you can see, it added this pretty cool glow to the image. The highlight slider adjusts the brightness of the bloom. The detail slider determines the area that's affected by the bloom. The lower the value, the smaller the object. The higher the value, the larger the object. The diffusion slider controls the extent of the bloom effect relative to the boundary where it appears. The bigger the value, the larger the size of the glow radius. Amplify is the opacity slider. Save lights helps you prevent clipping, because even though you will see some blooming highlights in film, they're actually never clipping. And with the mask mode, you see the affected areas of the blooming. So over here you can just play around with these sliders and adjust them to your liking. The vignette section speaks for itself. It just adds like a darker part to the edges of your image, which you can adjust to your liking. Over here we have a super unique characteristic to film. And this is something that you can't achieve in Davinci Resolve without Dehancer Pro. It's actually really cool. So this characteristic shows itself as an accidental change in exposure, contrast, and color from frame to frame as the film moves. The nature of this phenomenon is determined by several factors: uneven emulsion coding, instability of the camera shutter, so shutter speed accuracy. If you want your footage to look like Super 8 film, then this is a section to go crazy with. So the period slider determines the number of frames within which color, contrast, and exposure varies. The larger the number, the smoother, and the smaller, the more jerky. The exposure, total contrast, and color parameters determine the volume of fluctuations. With greater values, the corresponding variations will be more pronounced. The color parameter defines the amount of color shifts based on subtractive transformations. This effect is similar to the CMY color head tool, but within the film breadth, it's controlled with random values. And the impact adjusts the overall effect. When impact is reduced, all changes in color and exposure are reduced altogether, and vice versa. Gate weave is another really unique effect to the film look, something that you also can get in Davinci Resolve without using the Dehancer Pro plugin. Gate weave is a commonly used term that refers to the mechanical swinging of a film strip while it is being pulled through a frame window in a film camera, projector, or video coding device. The period parameter determines the number of frames within which mechanical frame shifts occur. The translation parameter specifies the volume of random shifts in the frame plane, both horizontal and vertical in conventional units. The rotation parameter sets the maximum angle of random frame rotation in relative units. The auto zoom parameter automatically zooms the image in to crop any black gaps left on the screen after the geometric offsets occur. Damn, this was a mouthful for a non-native English speaker. Within the gate weave tool, the impact parameter adjusts the overall impact factor, not the opacity of the effect. When impact is reduced, all shifts and geometric distortions in the frame are proportionally reduced down to zero. So let's show you the clip with film breadth and gate weave off. This clip is with film breadth on, and this clip is with film breadth and gate weave on. Pretty cool, isn't it? The output is actually an opacity slider for your entire Dehancer look. So if you think your look actually became a bit too strong, then you can just decrease it a bit. As you can see, the effect becomes quite less noticeable. And the last super cool feature over here is the fact that you can export your LUTs straight from Dehancer Pro. And you can choose between small and normal cube LUTs. So that's really great. Dehancer also has an iOS app and a photo plugin to make your workflow even easier and to yeah, just easily transform all your footage to the film look, which is super cool. The iOS app is really great and looks similar to what you're used to with the plugin on your desktop. And what I like about it so much is that you're able to transform your iPhone or whatever phone you have, their photos into the film look, and even the videos into the film look just from your phone alone, which is really crazy and super useful if you're on the move a lot. Dehancer also has a super useful blog to learn more about film, because honestly I didn't know that much technical stuff about film as well, and I've learned a lot about film and yeah, the Dehancer Pro plugin from their blog. I'll link their blog down in the description below. So do I think if this tool is worth the money? Because $399 for a lifetime license is pretty steep. And don't get me wrong, I really get that they put everything that they could into this tool and that the special VFX really took a lot of effort, and the fact that each and every effect is specific to each individual clip that you're editing is really great and really wonderful. But I do wish that they would have priced this a bit cheaper. However, if you are using this tool every day and it speeds up your workflow and you can get better color grades with this tool, then I kinda do think it's worth the money. If you would like to get the tool and save yourself some money, you can get 10% off with the code GONE10. Stay tuned for an upcoming YouTube video about their photography plugin as well. If you want to check out a full YouTube video that I graded with Dehancer Pro and want to see its really crazy capabilities, then you can check it out right here.